And now we have finally come to the fourth element of the stationery package, which is the folder. So we're going to start looking at that. And what you see here is basically, this is the original letterhead document that I made for the centered version of the letter of the identity, right? So I took this and I started a new layer, selected it with the marquee tool. However, I didn't do Control A. That would not have worked. I need to have the marquee tool, and I need to select the entire canvas. I'm on a new layer, which I can actually just put above everything else. And then I go to Edit, Stroke, Inside 3 pixels, and now I have a stroke around this document. And then I go to the background, and I go to canvas size, which is different from image size, and at some point I do need to explain to you a little bit more about that. I go to centimeters. It's at pixels, but I go to centimeters. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 5 centimeters, both to the width and also the height. So this is now going to be 34.7 centimeters, and this is going to be 25 centimeters, and then I press OK. And so now I have a document which is bigger than the letter, which is exactly what we have here as well. Now the reason, and I'm just going to close that, I just opened this to show you how I had done it. And the reason why is because the letter is going to go inside an area, inside a flap, like you can see here. So the outside, the object that the letter is going to actually get put inside needs to be bigger so that it can actually fit. So if we have 2.5 centimeters on each side, and also don't forget that it would not just be one piece of paper. Usually in a presentation folder you have a whole bunch of papers, so there's a thickness as well. So we leave about 2.5 centimeters from each side to create a bigger document. Now the letter is here, but we're not really going to be using this. What we're going to be using is a completely new version of the logo, which I have right here. And the rectangle that we had on the letter is actually here as well. So the rectangle is here. It's shorter because the logo became bigger, and the rectangle is still here. Let me just close the letter. However, what I decided when I looked at this is that I do not really want to have this rectangle. And the reason for that is because it divides this area in half in a very, very clumsy way. Now, what it reminds me of is like if you have a very fat lady and she's wearing a thick, big belt on her waist, and she's wearing a white dress or a slight gray or dark gray or whatever, it's still not going to look good, is it? I mean, we all know this from looking at people, that, you know, if you have these kinds of proportions, you know, you're not exactly slim, and then you are dividing yourself right through the middle with a thick horizontal thing, then that is not going to create a terribly attractive relationship between the background, in this case paper. If it was a dress, it would be fabric, and then what goes on top, in this case this gray band of the logo. In the case of an outfit, like I said, it could be a belt. So what I have done is I have decided to remove this and instead add a background color which is exactly identical to the rectangle. So let's close this. So all I have left is this now. However, I have made several alternatives, and some of them work on light backgrounds and some of them work on darker backgrounds. So I needed to figure out a way of making the logo type visible even if when we are on a light background. So what I did is I added a drop shadow to take it offend. Now I have deliberately left this a little bit too big. I'm actually going to show you how to lessen this, because we want something that is very, very, very subtle. We don't want something that is going to go crazy. We just need this in order to differentiate between the text and light backgrounds. That's all we need it for. So what I have here is, it's the layer style, it's the drop shadow. I have this, it's the thing is multiply, the blend mode. The distance is 0. The spread is 5. I could even reduce that to 3, maybe. The size is 40, which I think is okay, because then it spreads itself out a little bit more. The spread tells you the amount, and the size tells you the distance that it spreads itself. And then we also have the opacity, so we have spread and opacity, which kind of like you would think are the same thing, but they're not really, because the opacity can also work with different blend modes. And that we have at 50, which looks okay to me. So basically the logo is now, although it doesn't have that gray thing behind it, which it used to have in the, let's go back to the letter. In the letter it had that gray area behind it. So basically what I've now decided is that this gray area I'm going to actually use as a background. I'm not going to use it as a band, but I'm going to use it as a background. Okay, now let's get back to here. Close this. So this is what we now have for the folder logo. Now you could ask yourself the question, why can't I just leave it like this? And I have everything open here. So this is the letterhead. This here is the envelope. Let me just zoom out a bit. And this is the business card, front and back. And here, incidentally, if you remember, while I was doing the tutorial for this, I was really fidgeting around with this, trying to justify putting it like this when it is in fact aligned to the top and the bottom of the gray bar. But now that I have it here, just as a box as well, and then with a full gray background, then actually this and this is working together really well, and they are working together really well with this as well. So the question is, do these all work together? Yes, they do. And why can't I leave it like this? Sure you can. But the thing about the company folder is that it actually sets up a bridge between the stationery package and everything else that you will be doing after this point. So as you start to put the logo type and the identity onto things like bottles and jars and menus and aprons and t-shirts and shopping bags and you will be using other visual elements. You will not just be using the logo type, you will be using patterns, you will be using other vectors, you will be using other shapes, you will be using photographs maybe sometimes, and this folder here can become a very good transition point from the simplicity of these to the more complex things that we see in those other kinds of designs. So let me come to here and open this up and start explaining to you just exactly the kinds of things that I added. So I'm going to start with photographs. Now, can you put photographs onto a company folder? Yes, sure you can. And there have been many really nice examples of that in this class in the past. And also, you don't necessarily have to always stick to whatever is on your logo or whatever the company name implies. So what I have done here, I have found a number of photographs from FreePic that all have to do with spices, because this guy is, as you know, he's a spice merchant. He's an aktar, or spices and beauty products and things like that, but they all relate to natural products, to spices. So I picked a whole bunch of photographs from FreePic, and I am going to show you now how you would actually put one of these photographs onto a document like this. The thing you need to be aware of is the size of your document, because what you have here is almost 3000 pixels wide and almost 4000 pixels high. So the photograph that you're going to be putting on here has to be at least that size. You can scale it down, but because it's a bitmap, you can't scale things up, so you need to make sure that you have a photograph that is big enough to cover this area without having to be scaled up. Because if you zoom in here, you will see that everything has absolutely perfect detail. There is no loss of quality. Everything is exactly as it should be. When you look at the detail on these leaves or these herbs and things, this is really all quite wonderful. Now on FreePic, the photographs, when you just apply all and photo, instead of all you select photos, and then you just get the JPEG images, the quality, the size of the photographs is usually very high. It's usually around 5000 pixels wide by at least 5000 pixels high. So you don't really have to worry about that here. You just go and find the one that you like, and you download it. So for example, I have this here that, oh, and also I want to pay attention to my identity. So remember, I have the gray here as a background, which I also have here, and I also have here. So when I select photographs, I try, I mean, this is not, you know, I don't absolutely have to do it. If I find a nice photograph that doesn't have that kind of background, I will use it as well, of course, but if at all possible, then I try to stick to that color scheme. So this looks quite nice to me. So I'm going to download this just to show you how to do this. And let's just minimize all of that as well. So I already have this huge big folder here, in which I have collected a lot of material for the folder, to put on the folder. So I'm just going to put that in here as well. Here it is. Now let's go to Photoshop. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this photo and drag it right here, and it will come as a smart object. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to rotate it because I need a vertical, and then I'm just going to scale it up, like so. But then I also think I should rotate it in the opposite direction, so I'll do that as well, so that this handle is facing up. So now if you look here, it has that little thing on the corner that tells us that it's a smart image. Now if I double click on this, it'll go to the original JPEG image, and I can edit that there. And I can do a number of things with it here as well. But the important thing is this. Now, I scaled this up, right? I scaled this up after I brought it in here, and even so, it is still only at 28.33%. So this is not the actual size of this image. The actual size of this image, let's take a look, is it's 4561 pixels wide and 2566 pixels high. So it's a pretty big image, and when I put it here, again, you will see that there is no quality loss at all, because I have used a very big image, and so the quality has stayed the same. Does this fit with the with that dark background? Yes, sure does, right? So Now, is FreePic the only place where you can find photographs? No, of course not. Now, there's a video here that I made for the web design class, and the first 8 minutes of it or so are actually something that you should look at. I'm talking about where to go to find good photographs, and then also once you are there at those photo sites, how to create collections, how to curate photographs, how to make preliminary decisions, and so on and so forth. I will link this video in the description when I actually upload this, but it's called Wix Tricks 15A Images Curating, Editing, and Importing to Wix. Now, after a certain point, after about 8 minutes, this is of no interest to you at all. It's about web design, and it's also not geared towards design students, but people who from all kinds of programs who end up taking the web design class. But the first 8 minutes, 8-9 minutes of it is something that you should definitely watch. Now, during those 8-9 minutes, I talk about a number of websites, but one of the ones that I'm talking about is Unsplash. Unsplash is a great site for finding high resolution, very good quality photographs. At the top you will get the commercial stuff, but then if we click on here, for example, and if we go to download, now the original size of this is 3500 wide, 5000, so this is a huge photograph. So if you download this in the original size, this should be no problem at all to put on the company folder. And a lot of them, if not all of them, will be like that. Could one use something like this for Tikir Efendi? Yes, of course, why not? It's a nice, traditional, old-fashioned spice shop. Not in Turkey, it doesn't look like a Turkish spice shop with all these colors here, but that doesn't really matter, does it? So if I were to download the original size of this, then that would work very nicely as well. Same thing for Pexels. That's the other site that I was talking about, which is a very good one for high resolution photographs. And again, unless I remember wrong, they will give you the original size. So the original size is 3500 by, so it's clearly big enough for our purposes. It will fit, it will cover that area. And you don't need to scale anything up, which is, again, I just want to remind you again. And while I'm here, this is actually something that I would like to use. Well, I'm sorry, I can't say thanks to Alisna, or whatever her name was. Okay, so now you know where to find the photographs as well. So let's get back to our Tikir Efendi. And let's close the photos and open the big vectors, because another thing that I did is I found a whole bunch of really large size vectors. Again, I found these on FreePic, but this time I clicked on vectors, and I didn't find everything that I was looking for on the first page. I had to travel around for a bit, but some of it maybe came from the first page, I'm not really sure. But anyway, as you can see, I found a whole treasure trove. Did I use all of them? No, of course not. I only used some of them. But it is always a good idea to have more material than you actually are going to be using, to have alternatives in order to try things out, and so on and so on. Now, the first one I have here is this very nice spicy, well, it doesn't show the spices, but it shows the thing, well, it shows a pumpkin here, which is not really a spice. It shows some nuts, it shows some cinnamon, but then it shows this yummy thing that you can make out of spices. Now, if I wanted to use this one on this folder, then I would probably move this up. I would probably move it in such a place where it no longer interferes with the, maybe someplace like this. I don't think I would keep it in the middle, because then the top becomes very empty. Would I put it all the way to the top? I'm not sure, because then everything becomes too evenly covered, so I would probably leave it someplace here. And of course also I might just scale this down and see what happens then. So if I scale it down, and then if I move this up some more, yeah, that might work as well. So that was the first one. Now I found another one which looks like a lot of fun, but would not be suitable for a spice merchant, because it's something that would work for a cafe, but not really a spice merchant. But I wanted to show you that anyway, because it creates a very, very nice kind of patterned background that would be really good for a folder. Now, I found this here, which I actually really like, and I might end up using that. It's a vector, so if I were to double click on this, I would actually go to Illustrator, and it just shows this kind of like classical antique illustration that is made out of spices. But in this case, I might actually decide to use this on a lighter background, like so. Maybe a tad darker, so that the logo pops out a little bit, because I think then the contrast between this dark box and the white background might actually work better. Now I have this, which, believe it or not, is a vector as well, but probably instead of this I would probably go for a photograph, and then I have this here, which is a real beauty. This is a vector illustration. Now if I were to use this again, I would probably move this up to about here. And then I would maybe look at not white, but maybe a lighter color. Let's try a darker color. Oh, the dark one looks really nice, doesn't it? So this is something else that I might want to use. So that's it for the big vectors. Now another thing that I have are patterns. Now here I have a lot of patterns, and while I was looking for patterns, I was not really specifically looking for spices. I was also looking at other kinds of things. So I have this here, which is kind of like a floral pattern, which has a shadow, which kind of imitates this flowery thing that we have in the background of the logo type. So the scrolls here work quite nicely with that, which is why I picked this. And the way that this works is that this is actually imported from Illustrator, and there's a bottom and a top, so it's a seamless pattern, which means that it repeats itself perfectly. Sonsuz pattern. And all I needed to do was just make a duplicate and pull it down and align it. So let me just show you. So like this, then you can just bring it and it'll align perfectly. So that's one of them. Now the other one is this one here, which again is a small floral pattern. Now, just before we continue, with these I would use the logo in a centered way. So it becomes exactly centered when I see the purple line. So it's like this. Because they are continuous things, patterns are continuous things, so then it will be better to put it on a central place. Then I have these small flowers, which again, they kind of, the scrolls here imitate the scrolls here, and it gives us this kind of floral motif, this old-fashioned motif rather, which is good for a spice merchant. Then another thing that I did is I made patterns out of some scallops or scales. I'm just going to make this a little bit lighter, and the way that I made those was there's a website called Pattern Monster where you can make patterns out of existent presets. So I just took this one here, made the background transparent, made this white, made the stroke thinner, zoomed it in a bit, and I made it 3000 by 3000 so that I get a really big pattern, and then I just basically put it here. So these kinds of things, scallops, things like that, again, they give an, maybe I could rotate this actually. Let me see. Does this work better? Doesn't really make a difference. Because they also have this kind of old-fashioned feeling, and I thought that it could be a nice kind of backdrop to the logo, which is neutral, but it also actually works very well on a light background. So if I were to use this, I would probably use it on a light background, because then it creates this really nice contrast with the logo. And the same also goes for these circles, which I also made on this Pattern Monster website. And then again pasted in here. Now let's see, what else do we have? I have these spices, which are actually my favorite, and I may end up using that when I make the mock-up. So these are vectors again, very, very nicely drawn by someone with a kind of like a lino cut technique. There are special brushes in Illustrator where you can do things like that, which I wouldn't presume to know how to do, but maybe you can give it a try in your spare time, not in order to make things for this class. You don't have enough time for that. So these, I think, work much, much better on a lighter background. I mean, if it was on a dark background, I would need to do a whole lot of adjustments anyway, because some of it disappears, but that's not the reason why I'm thinking that it would look better on a lighter background. I just simply think that it does look better on a lighter background. Now we come to what not to use. I also wanted to give you an ugly example. Now, why do I think this looks ugly? Why wouldn't I use this? Because, you know, these red peppers here, they look like old men. You know, they don't really look like peppers. They seem to have these sad old faces, and everything is drooping down, and the line is sort of indistinct, and, you know, yeah, it's like sort of blah. It doesn't have, like, when you know, let's just go back to here for a second. You know, it doesn't have this nice, clean-cut, definite kind of feeling. It's just this, you know, wishy-washy. So you know, you may fall for this because it has color, but the color isn't working very well anyway. It's interfering with what's on the logotype. But, you know, you just, I mean, I personally wouldn't use something like this, because, like I said, it's just simply too wishy-washy and too badly drawn, and it looks kind of old. So that's why I wouldn't use it. What I would use, however, is this, and I may actually use this. Now, these are pepper plants, and what I did with them is, now if I double click on this, it'll go to Illustrator and open there. This is what they actually look like. This is what the vector looks like. It's kind of like this brownish color. I took one of them and just made it darker. I just took the hue saturation command and just decreased the lightness to -100, so that on one side I have this dark, and then on the other side I have the light, which kind of looks nice. It looks like as if there's a sunset or something, or there's a little bit of light coming in from this direction. So what I would probably do is I would either use this one here, or I would use this one here, or I would use one of the photographs. And in that case, I would probably go either for these spoons or for this one here. And let's just take one final look at the vectors. Possibly this as well. The pumpkin, possibly also. This, yes, this as well. But like I said, if I were to use this, I would use it on a lighter background, just dark enough so that the logo pops out. So that's all of them gone over. Now let's come back to here and start looking at how these things actually relate to each other. So let me just open this here. So we have this here. Does this work with this and this and this? Do they work together? Yes, I think they do. However, probably if the color is lighter. If the color is lighter, I think they work better like this. Do they work like this? Yeah, they do. In fact, probably on a dark background with this black drawing, actually they probably work even better. Okay, so that was the nut wreath. Now let's look at the pumpkins. Now, when we use the pumpkins, remember I was saying that we would probably need to bring the logo up. Now let's go back. Does this work with these? Yes, it seems to work with these, although I think the one before this one was working better. I'm not even going to open the cafe latte because that's not going to really work, and I'm not going to even look at this because the photographs are better. The mortar here, the pestle and mortar, does this work with this and this and this and this, and do they create a package? If I have a folder like this and if I have a letterhead sitting inside it, would that look right? Yeah, I think it would look right. So this would probably work as well. Now let's go to the photos. Does this work? The gray is almost the same gray. So yeah, I think this photograph, no problem. As a matter of fact, I think this photograph works second best to the nut wreath that we had. So let's just check out some of the other photographs. Does this work? Yeah, I think so. Would this letterhead look okay inside a folder that has this photograph on the top? Yeah, why not? This here? Yep. This here? Probably, although probably not as well as this one. Or this one. This one would be the one. And then finally this one. Yes, could be. Not as well as the other ones. So I'm always looking at, do all of them work together? That's the important thing that we need to look at. Now let's open this here. The pepper. Does the pepper work with these? Oh yes, it does. I think this looks very, very nice together. So a letterhead like this inside a folder that looks like this, would that work? Yes, it would. The ugly spices we're forgetting about. Now for the spices. Oh, and I forgot to actually align this to the middle. Does this work with this and this and this and this? Yes, I think it does. Would this letterhead look good inside a folder like this? Probably. The shadow pattern. Does this work with this and this and this and this? Yes, it does. And also, with this here, I'm almost having an idea that this could actually go here and here and here as well. And this is something that happens quite often when you are putting together a system. As you continue to make things, you may want to go back and add things to things that you made before. So now that I'm looking at all of these together, I'm actually thinking that this background here might work really well here and here and here as well. I would need to try that out. I don't think I have the time to try that out, but I would definitely try it out. Now, this here, does this look good next to this and this and this? Probably not as well as the other one. The scallops, well, you know, we can live without them. The circles, same thing. I mean, I think the circles and the scallops we can forget about. Here I think the shadow pattern is the one that works the best, and it could also be transferred onto here. The spices work well as well. The pepper works very nicely. That I don't think we could put here. That would be a real overkill. But would this fit in here? Yes, it would. And then when we come back to the vectors, the pumpkin works. The nut wreath works very nicely, and it also works very nicely with these. The wood, I'm going to forget about. The mortar, yes, that could be used as well, and the photos we've looked at already. So we have many choices of covers, and what I will do is when I put together the mock-up for the whole package, then I will try out all kinds of different options, because then I will really see it together, and then I will really know whether things fit or not. Okay, so that was it for the centered one, and I will be making another one, a shorter one, for one of the left align ones as well. See ya.